Right?
Hi, welcome back to TV Debris. Today we're going to be taking a look at Love is Blind Season 8, Episode 5. Let's get started. This episode starts with us picking up right where we left off in Episode 4, as we assumed it would. It's Dave and Lauren in the pods. And Lauren, in the last episode we saw, she came in pretty strong. So they start off their date this episode with Lauren saying that she's not sure how he could be talking such a big game to both her and Molly, and either Molly's just kind of making stuff up or Dave's really good at saying the same thing to both of them. And Dave tells Lauren that the thing that's been really kind of holding him back with her is that he's not sure if she's seeing anybody else when Molly made it clear that Dave was the only person she was talking to. He says he doesn't like it or didn't like it, but I mean, he wants the same from Lauren, so it makes me think that maybe he was keeping Molly like a backup, just like we saw with Madison and Mason, just in case. But he does go on to say that Molly and him are so similar and they just agree on every single thing. And Lauren says, "Oh, I don't know how you're saying this about her and not about us." I was like, I'm not really sure that I've seen too much. They haven't necessarily disagreed, but like there's been a lot more during the dates with him and Molly of just mutual agreements. They've shown that a lot more on screen. But Dave does say that him and Molly haven't had any really deep discussions, which seems true. I mean, as far as production goes, we haven't seen, I doubt they'd cut out massive chunks of meaningful conversation, especially when they want somebody like Dave on the screen for so long. And then Lauren says, "I don't know how you haven't been getting that from me, that I'm into you and I want to be with you." And Dave goes on to say, "Oh, like when you said cancel your dates?" And Lauren says, "Yeah, I mean, I just don't know how you weren't getting it." And Dave says, "Oh, I thought you were joking," which, to be fair, she did say it as a joke the first time. And then when she brought it up to him later, she said, "Oh, remember how I was joking about you should cancel your dates? Why didn't you?" And it like took a weird tone that clearly wasn't a joke, but she framed it as a joke both times. I don't know. They seem to be past that, I guess. Then Dave says to Lauren that she's the only person in here that he's brought up the fact that he could propose to her. He never said that to Molly. And he says, "Oh, well, it's not you that scares me. It's me that scares me." And then he does a bit of pacing in the pods and the date like kind of awkwardly ends. Oh boy. After the date, there's a shot in the women's quarters, and it's Molly sitting on the couch with Madison, Monica, and I believe Vanessa. Molly says, "Dave told me that he's going to break it off with his next person, but she's been in this date for an hour and a half." And as soon as Lauren comes back in, Madison, being the little shit stirrer that she is, she goes over to Lauren, who's at the fridge, and she says, "Molly said that he told her that he's gonna break up with you." And Lauren says, "Well, that's not what he said to me." Molly's like, "Yeah, I'm not sure. I think he might be playing you." And I'm not sure if Lauren thinks he is or isn't, because she says, "Oh, well, Molly told me that he said she was his number one, and Dave just told me that he never said that either." So we'll see. Next in the pods is Mr. Ibuprofen and Britt. Britt starts by saying she woke up a little sad, but, ready. And Devin says, "Well, why are you sad?" And Britt explains that it's because she wished that there was a little bit more validation and understanding and acceptance on his end when she opened up to him about being bi. And she says, "Well, I'm glad you were honest about it." Devin says, "Yeah, I really appreciate the way that you were when I was vulnerable with you, and I'll never forget that." And Britt Oh, she's such a queen. I love her. She's probably the best woman that has been on this season. It's actually a shame that we're not going to get to see more of her. She says to him, I think you're a great person, but we're just not each other's person. You're a little bit more rigid than somebody I'd want in a partner, but I think we can be good friends. And I was just like, oh, my heart, she's such a good person. And the fact that she sat there and didn't sell herself short just to keep going with this TV show or anything. Like, what a gem. And she gets even better because she is so sweet after that. She says, oh, and I know the other person you're talking to, which is Vanessa, and she tells Devin she's a great girl, and I really think that you guys will have something good together. She's a really good friend of mine, and I think she'll be a great choice. And my heart, I was like, oh, Britt, you're such a good lady. So yeah, Britt has ended it with Devin, which is great because she does not deserve somebody like that. She's too good for all the nonsense that this man encompasses. And I guess we'll see how he and Virginia do next. Devin and Virginia's date is a pretty basic one. They both go into the pods and they have gifts sitting on their tables waiting for them from the other person. And Devin opens his first. Virginia had given him a camera, a passport cover, and a ring that belonged to her grandmother. She said that the ring was her grandmother's and her grandfather and her were together forever and had 6 kids, and that it symbolizes the love that she hopes to have with her partner, and that the passport and camera are for them to make memories and have adventures. And Devin gives her a necklace, some roses, and a cutting board. I was stumped for a second. A cutting board that has an engraving about how giving people food is giving them a piece of your heart, and she has his heart, so now she can have his food. And the necklace has his initial, I guess, and a heart. I didn't really get a good look at it. But then they go on to talk about how now they can just continue this together. And Devin said that he thought he'd have to do a lot more of the talking, but him and Britt were really on the same page. So I'm sure Virginia and Devin will be one of our engaged couples. Sara and Ben are next, and they start off by talking about what mundane things do they do that they think is sexy. And Sara says when there's like a good meal and a nice wine. And Ben says that he likes like mundane things like going and getting groceries and then stopping at Starbucks. But okay, so the real thick of the date is Sara says, oh, I think love is when you feel safe and secure and want the best for that person. You always have their best interest at heart, and it's something that's protected, and not fleeting. And she says, I think I'm feeling that for you. And Ben starts kicking his legs and lifting up the ottoman with his feet and stuff. He's real giddy about it. And Sara says, I think I'm feeling that for you. And Ben gets all excited and says, oh, I'm really happy because last time we were on a date, I told you I was in love with you and you didn't say it back. You just said thank you, which I don't want you to feel like you have to say it. And Sara assures him that she's not saying it because she feels like she has to. And then it cuts to a video confessional of Sara, and she's saying that she really just wants to get more into deep conversations with him. Which makes sense. I mean, I don't know about these two. Even if they get engaged, I'm really not sure that this is one that's going to be a yes at the altar. Because I'm not sure that Ben holds the same standards and morals as passionately as Sara does. And that's something that can cause like a real serious rift. But Sara also has a bouquet that is pretty much like the same as the one that Devin just gave Virginia. And I kind of zoned out a lot through the date and was thinking, do you think production comes in with like a catalog or a little sign-up sheet and is like, who has somebody they want to send flowers to? Or do you just go up to them and be like, look, this is the gift I want to give them. Make it happen. Do they have to pay out of pocket for these things, or do you think the show does it? Oh shit, I thought we were done with Sara and Ben, but we weren't. We weren't at all. So Sara goes back to the women's quarters and says basically exactly what I was just saying, that she just wants to make sure that her apartment is aligned with her on her social issues that she's passionate about. And it jumps right back into Sara and Ben in the pods again. I'm guessing the next day or shortly after. And Ben reassures her that he is willing to learn and he feels like they're aligned on what they believe in, and that he wants her to know that he doesn't want her to feel like she has to teach him or educate him on these things, that he has a willingness to learn and be part of what she's passionate about and interested in. And Sara says she's not usually skeptical and she really believes him when he says that, and she wants to take a chance with him. So Ben gets down on one knee and proposes. So I was absolutely wrong. It is not Madison and Alex or Taylor and little Daniel that got engaged next. It's Sara and Ben. And Ben goes back to the men's quarters, and usually they're all screaming and shit. There was more excitement when Alex came walking through that door with the Barreling than when Ben walked in and literally leprechaun jumped in the air and yelled that he's engaged. It was kind of funny. And all the girls start cheering for Sara, of course. After the engagement with Sara and Ben, we head on over to the men's quarters for a little bit. And Dave is sitting around with Joey and Devin, Joey and Devin, and he's talking about how it's really hard for him because he's in the position now with these two where he's really not sure who he wants to be with. And I believe when he says this, he's alluding to Lauren. He talks about how I picture us outside of here and I think it could really work, but then I think about the issues it's going to bring me outside of this experiment, like with my sister, and he starts breaking down. And I was like, what the hell is going on with that? But Devin tries to reassure him that if it's right, his sister will come around and approve and appreciate it. Joey's there plucking his teeth out with a dental floss pick, and he gives him a nice pat on the back. So Dave, I'm not sure. He'll probably be with Lauren, but he ends the scene kind of just sobbing. And really, more than anything that got me is, who the hell is this guy? They just give a random shot of this guy. I'm pretty sure we've never seen this guy this whole season. I didn't even know this dude was in here. Then it pans over to the women's quarters, and Molly's talking to a few of the ladies, and she says, I'm just really confused because I thought he was going to break it off with Lauren, and he didn't. Clearly, she's here, so I'm not really sure what to think. And it goes into a video confessional with her where she's pretty much just echoing the same thing, that she really expected Dave to break it off, and that when she gets a gut feeling that something's right, she's usually correct, and she has that feeling now. Alright, this next one's quite a bit awkward. It's Dave and Molly, and Dave goes in and he says, I've been crying all day. I've been crying for hours. And Molly says, okay, well, tell me why. Open up to me about it. Dave goes into how he's conflicted between her and Lauren and how he doesn't usually like to make emotional decisions. And Molly has to let him know the obvious, which is, of course, this is an emotional decision. It's probably the most emotional decision. You're deciding who you want to marry. And Molly asks him how he feels, and he says, oh, I really think I have to see this through with Lauren. Molly says, well, in your ideal world, what do you want to happen? And Dave asks her what she means. And she says pretty much that she's trying to get him to just full on break up with her because she feels that he's putting her in the position where he's kind of dancing around it in order to have her say, pretty much just do the breakup herself and say, I think you should do this with Lauren. But he just goes, I thought I did just say it. So it ends kind of weird. Molly's like, okay then, have fun. And she's out. So Dave and Molly are done. They're really dropping like flies this episode. In my opinion, Dave kind of biffed that. I don't think that anybody should pick Lauren over Molly, but honestly, thank God for Molly because she doesn't need to deal with Dave and whatever weird thing is going on with the dynamic between him and his sister. Lauren can have that. Lauren can have all the fun with that. Molly heads on back to the women's quarters and Lauren's sitting at the table waiting for her. And Molly says, is it weird if we talk? And she starts sobbing. Oh, I felt really bad. I felt really bad for her. And she brings up to Lauren that she gave Dave the space to decide what he wanted to do. And she really almost immediately starts apologizing for the fact that she brought up that Dave was her number one in front of Lauren. She's like, I never ever would have said anything like that if I knew it was you, and I was hoping that wasn't why you weren't coming around us. And Lauren, this bitch, she goes, oh, no, I know you wouldn't have said that if you knew. I know you wouldn't have said that if you knew. And it's like, just be upfront. This girl is sobbing and apologizing. Just be upfront and take the ownership for the fact that is exactly what you thought. You sat there talking to other people saying how, oh, it would be real manipulative if she knows this and she's just saying this to me. You didn't know that she didn't know. Then at one point, Lauren goes, yeah, and I was just sitting here thinking, you're going to think this is funny, but I was sitting here thinking, is she more Delulu or am I more Delulu? And I'm like, this prod, like, Molly's sitting here crying and opening up to you and being genuine, and you're talking about, am I more Delulu or is she? And now she's going to feel like, of course she was, because Dave just broke it off with her. But yeah, Molly gives her a hug. She says she hopes nothing but the best for them and lets Lauren know that Dave is in it to pursue her. So I'm sure we'll have Lauren and Dave up next. Lauren and Dave spend the first bit of their date talking about Molly. And Lauren says that, it's hard to know if Dave was pretty much just saying the same thing to both of them and saying what both of them wanted to hear at the same time. And Dave tries to assure her that he never told her that she was his top or that he was going to propose to her or break things off with Lauren. He tells Lauren that in fact she was always number one on his list, according to his notebook. And he says how he's been nervous for the past few hours and felt out of body because he's afraid of being happy, and Lauren seems like she could give him happiness. And he says that he's scared of how his sister is going to react to all of it. My opinion on that is, if you care so much what she thinks and you know she's not going to be happy or receptive to Lauren or this experience, why would you even take the offer to be on this show? And part of me thinks that maybe he was just hoping for like a quick 15 minutes of fame, And Lauren says that he trusts in his relationship with his sister, and he has to trust in her relationship with him, and that over time his sister will come around to it or be open and receptive to Lauren being part of their lives. And then they kind of just reaffirm each other that they're both falling in love with each other and that this is something that they can see being their future. After Lauren and Dave is Taylor and little Daniel. They walk into the pods and they also have gifts sitting on the table. Daniel has 2 gifts and Lauren has like a bigger box in front of her. And he says, oh, I have 2 gifts. And Lauren's like, wait, why do I only have 1? And then she says there's 2 things in there, but they don't show either of their second gifts. So what we do see is Daniel gives Taylor his stocking that he uses in his photo shoots for his Christmas cards, and he says it has a D on it, and he says, I hope to, keep this tradition going with you, and eventually if we have kids with them, and I want to find a stocking that's exactly like this with a T on it. And Taylor says, I already have a stocking like this with a T on it. So they feel like that's a sign of fate. And Lauren gives Taylor gives Daniel a Christmas ornament with like a bunch of little characters on it. And she said her mother makes a Christmas ornament each year for all their family members with a little person or a little figure to represent everybody. And she hopes that they start having an extra face on there for her husband. Then they start talking about their biggest insecurities, and Daniel says that his was that he's a late bloomer. And Taylor goes, oh, does that mean you didn't grow? And he's like, well, I mean, I grew, just not until a little later. And I was like, oh boy, this guy, what if she backs out because she finds out he's short? His whole thing has been that he's short. And Taylor says that her biggest insecurity is her body. And she said that there's been times where she's felt guilty for eating pizza. And I was like, is this about to be like a little Daniel's afraid she's going to be fat kind of thing? But he doesn't. He says don't worry, like, guys feel like this too. I know it's a lot harsher for women, but guys feel like this too. And I'll see, like, Calvin Klein ads and think, oh, I could do that if I really dedicated myself. I could look like that, but it's all unrealistic. And then they talk about how Taylor's last boyfriend refused to post her on social media. And I personally, like, I guess I can understand the insecurity of it. I never really thought that that was as big of a thing as a lot of people make it out to be in today's universe. I could see if they're adamantly refusing, that's weird. If it's not something that's really like a big topic of discussion, which I don't think it should be, it's whatever. But I could see if they're like dead set against posting you, then yeah, that could probably be a flag. Taylor tells Daniel her Instagram handle and she says, oh, are you following me? And Daniel says that he has a weird thing where he can remember Instagram handles and the profile picture that goes with them, so he would know if he was following her and he's not. And I was like, that's a weird little tidbit of information. But yeah, then they talk about the same old things as everybody else about their future, and I'm sure they'll end up together. Next, we have Sara and Ben meeting each other for the first time. Sara says that she's super stoked. Ben says that he's super stoked. And the doors open up and they are both so ecstatic to see each other. They don't say too much other than, oh, let's elope. Let's go grocery shopping now. Let's not wait to get married. And they do a lot of kissing. Honestly, I think there's probably more kissing than speaking. And they get their glass of champagne. They're both very excited. And at one point, they stand in front of a mirror together to look at themselves as a couple. And Ben says that when he was looking in that mirror, he just saw all the future photographs and future Christmas cards, which seems to be a reoccurring theme on this season, Christmas cards. But anyway, he said that he sees his future when looking in the mirror, and he can't wait for all the memories and experiences that are to come with Sara. And when they're leaving and splitting up, he walks backwards because he doesn't want to stop looking at her. But they both seem super excited about each other, really, really happy. And we'll see if that holds up. Sorry, there wasn't too much to recap from it. It was just really, I'm not even exaggerating. It truly was a lot more kissing than it was talking. We're back in the pods with Dave and Lauren again. And there must have been some footage that we didn't see in between, because Lauren talks about how appreciative she is of their communication over the last few days to work things out and figure out exactly where each other stands. And she's really glad with how their conversations went. And Dave tells her that he's really happy that she's been there, because she could have bailed on him, and that she was there and she took it in stride and helped him come to terms with the fact that he can be happy with the person he wants to be with. And he ends up, well, they say, I love you. They both say, I love you to each other. And then Dave gets on one knee and he proposes to Lauren. So now they're engaged. And I'm sure we'll see their first meetup next episode. After that, it goes to the men's quarters. And it's Mason getting ready for his next date. Alex, of course, is sitting around talking to him about it. And he's like, if you have a connection with this person, you got to just go for it. And Mason honestly looks like he could pass out. He looks really freaked out and really nervous. He says that the next date is with his number one. So I'm guessing, well, I'm not guessing. Let's be real, I'm not guessing. It's Madison, and I'm sure she's probably about to break it off, considering she's technically Alex's girlfriend. This date with Madison and Mason is like almost hard to watch. So Mason, I guess, arranged for them both to have a big old breakfast in front of them. And in one of their dates, Madison was making all kinds of innuendo jokes about cream pies. So Mason has a quarter of a cream pie sitting on Madison's plate. She goes in and she's like, oh, I figured you heard the news. And Mason says, no, what's going on? And she says to him, well, I just don't feel like this is our story, and I got to this place a little bit faster with somebody else, and then here's the clip of the rest of it.
And yeah.
So that's how her breakup with him looked. It was that painful to stare at, trust me. Mason says he felt like he put unnecessary pressure on Madison by telling her that he was ready to commit to her. And Madison takes that as him saying that he didn't mean it, but he didn't really say that he didn't mean it. He said that he shouldn't have added that pressure. But also, she says to him, you know, it might have not been my place, but I had a talk with Meg. And I think that maybe you were trying to keep two good things going at once. And in the end, you probably lost both of them. And I'm like, what is with this lady? Like, what the fuck? Definitely used and abused them. And Mason says it wasn't his intention to keep two things going. And Madison is like, well, that's just kind of what this is. So then they end their date after Madison says, it probably sucks to hear, but we could maybe just be friends. Oh, and at the end, Mason goes, I'm not going to eat this breakfast. And Madison goes, appreciate it. Like, what? What the hell? And she scoops up the whole tray of food and just leaves the pod with it. Madison launches the door of the women's quarters open with her boots and she's carrying this massive tray of food. And she goes, breakups taste good. Like, what the hell? Then she goes up to where Meg and Monica, Sara, and Virginia are sitting. And she says, oh, he was only a clown a little bit. Then it pans over to the men's quarters where Mason comes in looking hella depressed. And of course, Alex is the one that goes up and hugs him and starts comforting him. And I'm like, I don't really know that I like this weird little monkey in the middle dynamic that you and Madison are putting Mason into. It feels really weird. But Mason says that he might not even be able to talk to his number two now because he knows his number one, Madison, and number two, Meg, sat down and had a discussion with each other. And Mason, he does bring up that he didn't mean saying that he would commit to Madison and that it felt like a mistake, which I'm not sure if that's a legitimate thing. He said he was going to bring it up in this date with her, but I'm not sure if that's really a legitimate thing or if he just is like, oh shit, I probably shouldn't have said that to him when I still got two. But he's afraid that that's going to come and bite him in the ass from Meg because Meg now knows about it. And it pans back over to the women's quarters and Madison's telling Meg, I said to him, oh, you know, your indecisiveness may have cost you to lose both things. And Meg was like, Madison, don't say something like that. And Madison's like, well, you know, and she just kind of tries to flower it up a little bit. And Virginia tells Meg, I challenge you to, you know, challenge your pride a little bit because this experience can be a little bit of an ego death and you still might want to give Mason a chance. Meg and Mason go into their pods and Mason's got, I think it's sushi sitting on a table for her and flowers in there. And Meg comes in and is like, you know, we got some shit to talk about. And Mason says that he was afraid that she was going to come in a bad mood. And Meg says, I'm not in a bad mood, but I have a lot to think about because I know that you had two connections and I do feel bad for you that your one connection just ended, but I don't want to be the person that's here by default. And I'm like, yeah, Meg, stick up for yourself. And Mason says that he made a mistake telling Madison that she was his main connection and that he was just validating her. And Meg says, are you only saying that because you found out she's with Alex? And you could see the look in Mason's face and it's like, oh shit, Meg. Mason didn't even know it was with Alex. Now he gets to go back and start freaking throwing every piece of furniture around the goddamn men's quarters because this weirdo has been all hugging up on him and trying to be his best friend and number one comfort in the fact of knowing that he was about to be dumped by the chick that this guy is going out with. And Mason says that Meg was his first date and he immediately put a 10 by her name and that no other girl ever has gotten a 10 by their name from him, and that she's always been the one. And then the episode just abruptly cuts. So the heat is finally getting turned up a little notch. I'm really excited to start getting into the next episodes because, not gonna lie, it's felt more like a drag this season in the pod episodes than I remember it being. Maybe it's just been a while since I've watched this show, but some of these dates it just feels like you're just watching paint dry a little bit. And I'm ready for all the crazy shit to start happening. I'm ready for people to just start being a bit psycho and like the real dramatic stuff, you know? So that's all we have for today's episode. I hope to see you on the next one. Bye.